Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's story, and I hope you enjoy this weekend. Tonight, we're reading 3 more scary fast food horror stories. But before we start, have you had anything creepy happen at a fast food place? Comment down below, I'd love to hear it. Now with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. The title really says it all. I mean, it's not exactly odd to go to a McDonald's at 3 a.m. I'm sure we've all been there, hungry in the middle of the night, wanting something, and a burger seems the greatest option, especially when it's cheap. That was my case. A few months back, I had horrible pregnancy cravings, and my boyfriend was at work and wasn't able to stop and get me one. But they were so bad. I ended up deciding it would be best if I just got up and walked the half-mile to get there myself. So, I did. I grabbed my phone and a zip-up and made my way for the McDonald's down the street. I didn't feel a need to grab any keys or a knife. All that matters was this craving to go away, and something that would have normally taken me 5 or 10 minutes took me 30. I couldn't help but feel I was being followed. It was just the subtle feeling, like the chills. My body would jolt when I got this feeling. I've had it my whole life, and nothing really ever explained it other than chills. And getting into my later years in life, I got them less and less, so this time, I was listening. Bodies send out signals, and we should listen to them, that type of thing. So I did, and boy, was I glad. I turned around and saw one of my neighbors who has recently moved in, trailing behind me. I've never had a bad encounter with him before. His name is Ed, and he is the most average person you'd ever probably see. Boring to look, not in a mean way. There just isn't anything recognizable about him. Nothing to note. He doesn't give off bad vibes, but staring at him in the darkness of the night doesn't give off good vibes either. I was really beating myself up for not carrying a weapon with me now. And because of this story, I carry everywhere I go. Including the fact that my child, unborn at the time, is really young and I am a defenseless petite woman. So, I did the next best thing and tried making conversation. "Tired or hungry?" I laughed. He didn't respond at first, but he did grunt. "Huh, just restless. Sometimes sleep is hard to come across these days." He sounded oddly normal. "Tell me about it. This one is kicking around a lot," I said, gesturing towards my belly. I didn't receive a response, so I could only assume he was gone. But it was only moments later I felt arms wrap around me and pull me backwards. My flight or fight response kicked in, and I started thrashing to get free. Everything in my mind faded, and the only thing that really mattered was getting safely out of the situation because I didn't want my child harmed in any way. I scratched at his hands that were pressing my chest down with major force, and to no avail, he didn't let go. I threw my arms around, not sure what to do with them before I started reaching for his head. I jammed my thumb into his eyeball, and he finally let go. I didn't think twice before running the rest of the way to the McDonald's. It was my best bet. Once I got there, the teenager behind the counter looked at me like I was a ghost. After sobbing for 15 minutes, I got him to lend me his phone. I dialed for the police and eventually they showed up. Leave it to the police departments to even remotely care about the well-being of someone else. I explained everything that happened, earning looks for the police officers. They made me take them to where I was attacked. The blood trail led into the woods. No way in hell was I going in there. My boyfriend showed up and then took me home. Flash forward to weeks later, and then I mean months. The police came to me with some news. Ed was actually wanted in another country for murder, a serial killer, and when he fled to America, he had murdered 9 more people. They found him deep in the woods of Alaska in a cabin, missing one eye. I'm writing this out while I still can, because I don't know how much longer I have or how to get the word to anyone. I'll get to that. An hour ago, or two, I'm losing sense of time. I was heading home a bit late after hanging with some pals, feeling a bit snackish. I see McDonald's as I drive by and think, oh hey, McDonald's, and divert my car right into the mostly empty parking lot. Seemed like a low-stakes impulse to follow at the time. When I pulled up to make my order, I did notice that the cashier kinda sounded a bit off, in a way I don't really know how to properly explain. The voice was very deep for the most part, just cracking a bit here and there, and the tone somehow seemed pretty scary and pretty manic at the same time. Almost as if someone had been taking hostages, but was in on their own capture. Imagine a voice like that mundanely asking if you want fries with that. Hell, it was even almost unsettling enough to give me second thoughts about my second dinner here. But in the end, I just said yes and drove around to the next window. Even though I hadn't been told to go ahead to the second window, there actually wasn't anyone at the first. So, I shrugged and pulled up to the second. At first, there was no one there too, but after a minute or two, a ragged-looking employee popped up out of nowhere. Turns out, the weird-sounding cashier now sounded and acted almost completely normal, at least in as much as one can really tell from such a basic interaction. He took my cash, quickly gave me my change and my bag and mumbled something I couldn't really make out, but assumed was something disingenuous, have a nice night or something, so I just said thanks and started to drive away. I only had gone like 10 feet or so when I quickly realized a tragedy in the making. We'd both forgotten my drink. I sighed and glanced behind me to see if I could just scooch back to the window real quick, but a black SUV was already at the window. I hadn't even noticed there had been a car behind me. I pulled back around the building, but despite repeated attempts at communication, no one answered. I gave up and pulled around to wait behind the SUV. The waiting took a long time. Eventually, I decided I might as well start on what I did have whole I waited. But when I pulled out and opened my Big Mac, it was clearly not what I'd ordered. Instead of a Big Mac or any sandwich even, all there was a gross mound of some pinkish-brown sloppy joe or raw ground meat-looking substance. I had no idea what menu item this even was supposed to be. Also, they had apparently forgotten my fries as well. As I looked back up in front of me, I now saw an impossibly long and skinny arm slowly reaching into the building. A weird clicking noise could be heard, then a muffle-wet tearing noise, just before the arm pulled back in so fast I couldn't make out what it was holding. And the SUV then immediately sped off like a maniac in what must have been easily one of the top 100 fastest times anyone has ever peeled out of McDonald's. I watched the SUV accelerate along the empty main road street for a few seconds, before shrugging and cautiously pulling back up to the window. The employee was no longer there, so I just waited a bit. After a while of increasingly uneasy waiting, I turned, knocked on the closed drive-thru window, and shouted, "Hey, I think I got the wrong order!" No response immediately came, but leaning forward to shout, I finally noticed small red splatters on the inside of the window. I also could have sworn I felt the weird not burger moved shift in a way that didn't make sense for the way I was moving, but quickly told myself it was just my nerves talking and pulled back to try to collect myself. This was quite a sticky situation. At this point, I don't know what kind of wonky criminal caper I'd stumble into, or what the hell to do about it. I almost just threw out the bag of God knows what and bolted, but ultimately decided I probably shouldn't leave freshly fingerprinted evidence while fleeing from a probable crime scene. And also probably should see if everyone is okay. What with fresh bloodstains and all, damn it. I tried pulling over and calling 911, only to get a heaping lack of service. Weird. I mean, this town is small, but it's not like I'm in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I try again, but no luck. I know then that I should try and see if everyone inside is okay. I do hedge for a few seconds, but my conscience gets the better of my fear. Damn it! Just wanted some frickin' chicken nuggets. I angrily mutter to myself as I open my door to trudge back over to the restaurant. I walked up to the front door first, and it was locked. Glancing inside, it was hard to see much except empty dining and checkout areas. But when I walked over to try the secondary entrance around the corner, it was, unfortunately, I remember thinking, unlocked. Looking in from this angle, I could see into the back kitchen area some, but still saw no people. I sighed again and apprehensively walked in. Hello? Is everyone okay? I got the wrong order, I think. Oh, and also there's something splattered on the window, like maybe ketchup or blood or something? No answer comes. When I walk up to the counter, weird, eerie clicking and whirring noises that reminded me of the ones coming from the black SUV start to come from some unidentifiable location. Sounds more like I'm in a UFO than a restaurant. Nope. I turn around to leave. But the door I'd just come through was now somehow locked. Damn it! Without much else to do, I make my way into the back area itself to investigate further. I see the employee I ordered from sitting cross-legged on the floor just behind the counter, with little movement or no signs of life other than occasional violent twitches. One other person who appears to be the manager is laid out unmoving on the floor a little ways farther into the kitchen area, behind one of the stations. Both are breathing, but the manager appears to be unconscious, and the front employee is just looking ahead with a vacant, dead-eyed stare. I don't see anyone else around, nor can I quite tell where or even what direction the creepy mechanical noises are coming from. Suddenly, the noises got much louder and faster, almost seeming angrier. I look back around and the employee is now standing and looking at me with her creepy vacant stare, still unmoving except for a slow breathing and periodic twitching. Yo, what is happening? I yell into the store. No answer again. Well, no answer unless you count another sudden increase in the volume and tempo of the ambient techno horror score seemingly coming from all places at once. Then, the power went out. No, fuck all this, I said to myself, as I walk around the Walking Dead extra of a cashier and picked up the cash register, tossing it at the glass door to break the glass before running to the relative safety of my car outside. Instead of the satisfying complete shattering there would have been in movies, it was more like a decidedly unsatisfying thud and a few large cracks. It took a couple more throws before I'd make enough progress to easily kick the rest through, but once I did, I bolted to my car. I'll admit, at this point, I was really freaking out, and just booked it home. After a minute, I'd mostly calmed down, but something was still gnawing at the back of my mind, and after a few more seconds, I realized what it was. When I happened to glance over to the passenger seat, finally noticing the now empty McDonald's bag, the grotesque mound of maybe meat was nowhere to be seen. Well, shit. Just then, the car started making a mix of gross tearing and familiar whirring noises, so I immediately pulled over just in time for all the lights inside to start flashing before shutting off entirely. Nothing would turn back on. I got out of the car, and when looking back inside, finally noticed bits of writhing sludge inching their way all over the floor of the car. One chunk was in the bend of the driver's seat where I'd just been sitting. How had I not noticed that? I pulled out my phone to call the police, but it was now covered in bits of slime itself. I dropped it and tried to wipe off what was now on my hands, but it was extremely sticky and wouldn't come off. Every attempt and movement seemed to just push it farther up my arm, and when I finally stopped, it was quickly inching its way up of its own accord. I sat horrified, panicking and trying to think of what to do, anything to do, but no solution came. I finally started trying to pull it off to a similar lack of success, and the sludge made its way to my mouth. I tried to clamp it shut, but it wedged its way in with surprising force as my screams quickly turned into muffled whimpers. The stuff was the worst thing I'd ever tasted, like rotten meat and hand soap and gasoline all at once. My body instinctively tried to reject it, but the Mack monstrosity pushed its way past my gag reflex until it finally slid down my esophagus. I violently started coughing and gagging, but no matter how hard I tried and how much it felt like I was just about to, the stuff refused to come back up. Finally, I gave up and just sat there crying and hyperventilating. Eventually that too subsided, thinking back to everything I'd seen up to this point, and no, this is no normal wrong order. I don't know what happens next, but judging from what I saw inside the actual building itself, I didn't love the apparent possibilities. I pulled up my laptop from the back seat and started typing this up. I cannot call anyone, drive anywhere, or do much at all, but I can at least record what happened just before whatever is about to happen. I'm already starting to feel inside cramps in my abdomen and agonizing shooting pains spreading up my body. My thoughts themselves are starting to feel less my own. Vague feelings and visions of transformation, of spreading, of overtaking that I cannot otherwise decipher, and starting to transplant normal thought. And all the while, it's harder and harder to force my body to move at all, except for the violent twitches. I hope someone finds this and does something, anything. I eat way too much fast food. I've been trying to do better, but it's so tasty and convenient, and it's easy to overindulge when you struggle with depression. Plus, I personally like trying new restaurants and supporting local businesses. It's hard for me to pass up a mom and pop joint because I'm curious to find a hidden gem or a hole in the wall. About a month ago, I was driving home from a semi-disappointing Tinder hookup. This guy lived in a sort of rundown part of the town that I wasn't too familiar with, but I kept an eye out for any interesting drive-thrus. He said there was a Burger King and a McDonald's, but he hadn't mentioned Local Chickn. It was a bit run down, but brightly lit, and still open at 2 a.m. I went through the drive-thru. They only had 5 combo meals, but you know what they say, if a restaurant does a few things well, it's better than a huge menu of food that isn't that great. It was a little weird though. I waited a full 5 minutes at the speaker. I know fast food jobs can suck, so I try to be patient, but I finally said, "Hello?" The speaker crackled and a voice said, "Welcome!" Not, "Hi, what can I get for you?" or "Welcome to Local Chickn," like most places would. Just, "Welcome." It was a deep, rich voice, what my mom used to call a good telephone voice. Can I please get the 2-piece meal with fries?" I asked. "Yes," said the voice. They didn't tell me to pull around. An old man was wandering through the lot. He looked homeless, and I would have given him change if I had any, and if it was daylight, but I was a little freaked out. I pulled around to the first window. It was pitch black inside. What the heck? I thought. Did they just shut down? The lights had been shining a minute ago, and their marked sign said open until 3 a.m. I was creeped out and decided to just get out of there, but before I drove past the second window, I saw a dim glow. I stopped, freaked out but curious. This would be a good Yelp review if I survived. I kept my foot lightly on the accelerator though. The window swung open and a young woman leaned out, smiling, holding a paper bag and a drink in a paper cup. She seemed like a totally normal teenager working fast food and happy to be almost done with her shift. Even in the dim light, I could tell she was really pretty. "Thanks," I said, taking it. "What do I owe you?" "First time here?" She wasn't the telephone voice. She sounded like a teenager, a little bit country, like people in this part of the city sometimes do. Yes. "On the house the first time," she said and winked. "Enjoy!" The window swung back closed and the young worker was ensconced in blackness. Fuck, I said to myself and started driving home. I thought I'd just toss the meal, but I was a bit curious. What the hell was this? Some kind of front for drug dealers or some other operation? Even if it was, turning the lights on and off and acting weird was stupid if they were trying to look legit. The chicken and fries smelled wonderful though. I was on automatic pilot driving home because I reached into the paper bag, pulled out the straw, and started gulping at the Coke before I realized I was supposed to wait. Shit, should I call poison control or go to an ER? I felt like I was being paranoid though. The Coke tasted like a Coke, a really, really good fountain Coke actually. I did wait until I got home to inspect the chicken and fries. They smelled so good, and the stress of the hookup and the weird drive-thru experience made me reckless, I guess. Against my better judgment, I ate it all, and it was amazing. Drumstick, breast, and awesome crispy fries. Ugh, I'm such an idiot, I thought. I'd been depressed lately, sure, but this was pretty reckless. The other side of my brain kept telling me it was just fast food. I got a text, and it was from my Tinder hookup, Josh. Hey, had fun. You get home okay? It was more considerate than a lot of Tinder people, so that was nice. Yeah, I had fun too. Stopped by some place called Local Chickn. It was weird. Local Chickn? LOL, you're funny. What? Why? It was good, but a really weird place. Is it a drug front or something? No. Stop playing. That place was pretty good, but it's been closed for like 8 years. What? Okay, now you're just messing with me. Nope, you must have mixed it up with someplace else. Google it. I gotta sleep, but hit me up if you want to hang again. He sent a few heart and eggplant emojis. I'd normally be happy for a potential nice fuck buddy, and maybe more, but what the hell? It had to be a joke. I did what he suggested and Googled Local Chickn in the street it had been on. Permanently closed since 2011. My heart started beating really hard. There were old reviews. This place was awesome. It closed down partly because of the murder of an employee. Very sad. Missed their wings. I looked up Local Chickn's address on Google Maps, and it was basically just an empty lot with the remains of a raised building, some trash, and some weeds. There were a few others like that. I began to research a little more, and the murder victim was Kendra Lee. She was the girl I'd seen, no doubt. Her obituary said she was 17, a promising young student and great friend. Kendra was taken advantage of and strangled, and then dismembered. Some of her body parts were found in the fryer. I went and threw up, and had a panic attack. The murderer, Dean Forsyth, had confessed immediately. He'd shot himself but made a video which I unearthed after some more searching. I'd looked up stuff on the dark web and I had to fire up Tor and look kinda hard, but it was out there. I had to do this. I was trying to kill the part of myself that just aimlessly drove around and ate garbage and fucked garbage. I'm sorry for what I did. She cooked and gave me a meal for free, even though the place was closing for the night. I killed her because she was kind and I hated how pathetic I was. He paused. If she'd been a bitch, I probably would have just tipped her and left. Dean looked straight at the camera. Don't be like me. Then, he shot himself in the head on camera. I started crying and looked for the Local Chickn bag and cup. They were nowhere to be found. I dumped out my trash and clawed through it, but it was nowhere. I still could taste it though. I had thrown up and brushed my teeth, but it still tasted like I'd just eaten a great fast food chicken meal. I looked at Kendra's picture again and then watched part of Dean's confession again. Dean was a monster. He was overweight, unhealthy skin, sad-eyed, sort of like an older male version of me. Or at least, it felt like he was talking straight to me, looking through time and space right into my soul. He had a beautiful telephone voice. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.